Welcome back to the Real Men of Real Estate, hosted by me, Thomas F Chappell Jr. of the Black Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club. Now we're here with our guest Ryan. We're talking ADUs, and my man Ryan's been doing ADUs for quite some time, and he's got a huge following on YouTube's and TikTok, and just wanted to get to ask Mr. Ryan here, why is it important to you to give out the content that you're giving on the ADUs? Do you dabble in the ADUs yourself, or what are you doing?
Yeah, well, I want to. I want to get an ADU in my yard, but they're expensive. And so while I'm doing all this educational research, I realized that putting that information out there is actually a biggest part of the puzzle, where the state is passing all these really cool laws. Lots of entrepreneurs are out there creating really cool solutions, but at the same time, it's just very hard to get good, accurate information. And so if I want to see a lot of housing built in California, then the thing that I can do that's going to have the biggest impact is just getting that information out there. Now, there's a great benefit for me, selfishly. I get to become this kind of point person for the accessory dwelling unit movement and a lot of California housing policy. And as a result, I get a lot of opportunities like coming on your show today, and I get to promote some of those entrepreneurs to my audience. And so I operate a business off of ads and sponsorships where I get to introduce people to really great solutions that are going to help them build a really life-changing housing unit. You know, it's usually creating housing for a family member, so they're saving themselves $2,000-3,000+ a month in rent, or they're creating a situation where they'll be able to take care of an elderly relative, or an older relative is going to be able to do childcare for the family. You know, it's really game-changing stuff that lets people create a lot of housing and security for themselves, and usually age in the neighborhood that they've spent a lot of time in. It's all very important to me, and it's cool that I can make a living while I'm doing it, right?
So has anybody came back and said, you know what, Ryan, we appreciate the content that you put out there, and we decided to go ahead and build our own, and it's been very successful to us.
Yeah.
Tell us something about your testimonies that you've been getting.
Yeah, absolutely. I get this feedback all the time, which makes the job very very heartwarming. And the more we reopen and get to do in-person events, I'll go out to an ADU tour, and it's very flattering how many people are like, "You're the ADU guy." It's very exciting, and a lot of people are finishing projects because I started about 2 years ago, and that's, it takes a year plus sometimes to get this off the ground and get it actually done. And so it's really cool to run into people. Some of my favorite stories are like, I call them my world travelers. I do a lot with senior citizens who want to age in place. But you use a phrase like senior citizen and age in place, and everybody thinks of like institutional kind of aging. And that's why I call them my world travelers. A lot of the time, these people are like the coolest clients because they realize they've got this big old house that's worth a lot, and they don't need it anymore. They want to build a tiny place in the back where they put their stuff, and then they spend like 6 to 9 months out of the year traveling the world, and they are funding that with the rent from the big house.
Right.
And in the meantime, they just have a little landing pad in the backyard where they keep their stuff. They keep their winter clothes in the summer. Like they are living life. So I love a story like that. You also meet a lot of people who are young professionals that bought their house maybe 3 4 years ago, and now they're adding a kid to the family, or maybe their second kid, and now they're working from home, and all of a sudden the house is getting pretty tight, but they can't afford anything else in California.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
It's just a crazy time to get into a different sized house for them. And so the ADU is kind of a lifesaver, a marriage saver. It's everything because they just need space. Like they did not anticipate full-time work from home with a kid or two in the same space, right? So I get a lot of stories like that, and it always warms the heart to see a family get to live where they want to live, not get chased out of a neighborhood by rising costs, and being able to rise to meet the moment by creating some housing for themselves.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Now, I'm going to ask you to elaborate on the difference between a tiny home and an
Sure.
ADU. Is there any difference?
Yeah, there's a lot of differences. It's a great question. So accessory dwelling unit is a really specific permit term, and it varies by state, it varies by city, and so uh, broadly in California, accessory dwelling units are generally permanent fixed housing. Now they can include manufactured housing, which is what we used to call mobile homes,
Correct.
and that can be included as long as it's on a foundation and it's taxable as a permanent asset, right? A
Okay.
asset. Uh, Tiny homes are less regulated as a term, and so they can take a variety of forms. They can be trailers, and they're still on wheels. They can be motorized. You could have park model recreational vehicles, for example. They can be just little houses like tough sheds that may be built to a code that's good for a house, or maybe not. Maybe like a tough shed, they're not built up to residential standards. And so it can include a lot more. There are 5 jurisdictions in California that I know of that have a special code for movable tiny homes, and those jurisdictions offer a way to turn your tiny house into a permanent home. You take it off the wheels and you put it on a foundation of some kind, and then that uses up one of your ADU permits for that property. But that's only 5 jurisdictions are doing that, so it's a small use case that hasn't expanded yet. There are other rules that might let you put a trailer on your property. I know in my neck of the woods, you can get a caretaker trailer, and there's special
Oh,
rules for that. And
okay.
in fire-prone areas in California, there's other kinds of emergency rules that let you park an RV or something for up to a year, maybe more. So there's big differences between the tiny house and the ADU. And then the other thing that's worth saying is ADUs can be pretty big. In California, a lot of cities allow them to be 1,000 square feet, 1,200 square feet. So, and that's significant. That's like 3 times bigger than a 400 square foot tiny house. So,
Okay. Now, when you talk park models, what's the
yeah.
difference between park models and mobile homes?
Yeah, so I'm getting a little bit over my skis here. I'd have to look it up because really motorized, like if it's got a VIN or a license plate and it's got a motor, that's like a whole separate thing compared to what we used to call mobile homes, manufactured housing, federally approved, built up to Title 25 in California. Those are just like night and day, completely different categories. But then I also don't know as much about RVs and park models, so there might be some overlap that I'm not familiar with, and I don't want to. I always tell people, yeah, there's a lot I don't know. No matter how much time I spend reading about this stuff and talking to professionals, what I can promise is I'm gonna find out for my clients. I'm always gonna look it up and learn what I need to know, but I cannot promise to know everything.
Right,
You
exactly.
should be suspicious if anybody says they know everything.
Exactly, exactly. So, how much time do you do put in for researching?
Oh, a lot, a lot. It's my full-time job these days, right? And so you take information like, well, what we just talked about with the difference between tiny homes and ADUs. I got a unique opportunity to pop on a panel with 2 people from the HCD, the Housing and Community Development Agency in California. They're kind of like California's version of HUD,
Okay.
and they were experts in this subject. So I got to spend an hour kind of asking them questions. I put that on the YouTube channel so that you can see the full interview, but also it kind of lets me build my knowledge base and then go write an article, and I can always contact them and follow up and say, hey, I had this really specific question about park models. Can you kind of dive into it for me, and kind of building up that network so I can always go back to the source and get the official government line. Yeah, it's a full-time gig.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's glad that we have somebody like you that can give out the content because a lot of people they don't research. A lot of people are not sure how it's going to benefit them, if it's going to benefit them, or is it even worth even looking at getting into? So when you have people like yourself putting the content out, that makes people want to say, okay, maybe I need to look into this a little bit further, or you know what, it's just not for me. Now, one question here: if you go ahead and put an ADU in your backyard, and you decide, okay, some years down the road, life happens, you get transferred to another state, or you want to move closer to the grandkids, with those units, can are you able to take them with you, or they have to stay with the actual property?
Yeah. So for the most part, they will stay on the property.
Okay.
Having said that, the the fewer people use the manufactured housing solution at the moment. Most people are doing site built, custom stick construction,
Right.
or modular, but doing it the same way. Having said that, if you use a manufactured house, like I would be very happy to help somebody move that with them at the end. There would be a whole process for it, but it should be possible. When they say in the code that an ADU is permanent, it doesn't mean permanent like for forever and ever. It means permanent in the sense that like you could tax it like a permanent structure. And so there are still ways to take a unit with you. I haven't done one like that yet, though. So I'd be really eager to actually help somebody through a project and get some real world experience to back up kind of my book knowledge about that, if that makes sense.
Okay, okay. Well, we're going to end up taking our last break here, and we're going to come back with Ryan, our guest, talking about ADUs. Thank you for listening to the Real Men of Real Estate. Catch you in a few seconds. Thank you.